in taking the leadership here. Today we'll be joined by Professor David Mathuva, who I'm sure a lot of us know him from different roles he plays, or he's also our East African rep. But more importantly, David has been a strong champion of the pitching template, which is something, or the pitching framework, as we call it, which is something he'll be talking about. So it's a pleasure to have David take the lead here. Um, but if you're new to what we do in the AFA is the Pan-African Association for Accounting and Finance Academics. We spend um, our resources and time trying to help advance thought leadership in the continent. And this is just one of the few things we do. Maybe towards the end of the webinar, we'll talk a little bit about our conference coming up later this year in Johannesburg. So if you're coming to this for the first time, please follow us on our LinkedIn page. You will get more details there. But more importantly, also, you're welcome to leave your email to get updates about what we do. So I wouldn't take too much of your time. I just want to thank David for volunteering his time and also thank Theodora for organizing this. So we'll sit back and enjoy the rest from here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Prof. Yinka. Prof. David, I was going to introduce you, but Prof. Yinka has already done the work. So please, we leave the floor to you, but before you start, please, you can tell us a little bit about yourself. We're very excited to know more about you and know more about the topic under review today. Thank you.
Thank you, President Yinka. Thank you, Theodora, for the warm welcome. By way of quick introduction, I am David Mathuva. I am the East African representative in the Association of African Accounting and Finance Forum, where my role is to bring together academics, researchers within East Africa. Of course, Africa is our focus, but we have the various clusters where I kind of focus on the East African region. But I'm also an associate editor at the Journal of Accounting in Emerging Economies. It's one of the journals that kind of sponsor or tag along the African Accounting and Finance Association Conference, which we normally have every year. I'm also a very keen advocate of case studies in Africa, cutting across different disciplines. And in that regard, I am the editor-in-chief of the Strathmore Africa Case Center. It's an initiative we began like 3 years ago with a view to documenting more African case studies, real case studies that can be used in teaching and learning. And definitely we are very open to case studies in accounting and finance. I do many other things. I am based at Strathmore Business School, where I do some bit of administrative work. But very importantly, my areas of interest are in accounting and financial markets. And as President Yinka has mentioned, I also do support early career researchers, PhD students, candidates. I mean, I just had my PhD student defend last week, and he was successful, and we are happy. So that is the other thing that I am actively involved in. And for that reason, I've been a very keen supporter and advocate of the pitching research framework, which we will be discussing a little bit today, with a view to seeing how it can help us as PhD students, even academics, researchers, in our various engagements. But our focus today will be more on supporting PhD students as they develop their research proposals. Just a quick one on the framework. This framework has been there since 2014, and if you allow me, I can share what I have prepared here, just a brief presentation. The framework has been there with us for quite a while, as far back as 2014. And actually, that's the first time I got a chance to interact with Professor Robert Pfaff during a World Congress of Accountants at Florence. And at that time, he was just trying, looking around and seeing who could be interested in this, framework. I didn't know what it was then. I was just a PhD student. I was still looking for the networks and the likes. And you can see me there with Professor Alan Sangster. He's a professor of accounting history with the University of Aberdeen. I really got excited when I met him because I had, read him in the books. There's a book he has authored with Frank Wood. Frank Wood is late, but Alan is still with us. And at the back end there, you can see very many accountants there, some of which you might know. And it is from this forum where I got very interested in this pitching research framework, which I have since utilized till my most recent promotion. Actually, I used the pitching research framework to pitch for my promotion. So you can see it's not just research, but it can also help you even pitch your research profile as a researcher or an academic, the things that you've done. So I find it a very novel kind of framework that can help us as academics and researchers in various ways. Now, just a preamble question, because I've spoken about this framework, but I wanted to know from the audience we have here whether we've utilized this framework so that I know how to pitch my presentation. And my first question is, how many of us in this forum have utilized Robert Pfaff's pitching research template in their research works? I've kind of created some Menti platform there. If you don't mind, you can just share with me your ideas on it so that we see how it goes. So this is the Menti platform. If you don't mind, you can just go to Menti, and then there are some questions we have there which you can just respond to help me get an idea. So I'll give this like 2-3 minutes. You have the code there. Just go to menti.com. And then once you go to menti.com, you feed in this code, 4284-8868. And then I have just like 3 questions there to give me, this is just to give me an idea as to where we are in terms of the research frameworks that we might have used. And it is for all of us, whether you're a PhD student, candidate, or you're an early career researcher, an experienced career researchers here can also, share their insights. So it's open to all of us. So you have 3 questions. Once you submit, it moves you to the next one, I believe. Theodora, you try it. I hope you're able to feed in some input there.
I've actually submitted, so.
Beautiful, excellent. Yeah, and in the set of questions I'm asking, even though you might not have used the pitching research template by Pfaff, you might have used other guidelines or frameworks that could also be very useful. It's in one of the questions that you can respond to. And at this point, let me see what we have from the responses. So let me share what allow me to just share what we have from my end. Right, so this is for those who've responded. Are you aware of Robert Pfaff's 2014 pitching research framework? And I can see 4 are aware, 9 are not aware, all right? And that gives me an idea as to where we are in terms of familiarizing ourselves with it. Then I have utilized Pfaff's pitching research framework. I see 5 and 8. Interestingly, the number changes there slightly. So it looks like there's an additional person there who has utilized this actually. And then how have you used Robert Pfaff's pitching research framework? Competition to pitch my research projects in the past. I've used it to present my research. I haven't used it. Yes, and won the Strathmore chapter. All right. Now, something that we normally do with the pitching research framework and the tool there, every year there is usually an annual global, we call it the International Global Pitching Research Competition, the IGPRC. And I think it's still up. I've shared some links in my slides there. So for those who might want to, by the time we are done, if you might want to pitch your research and showcase what you are doing for this competition, I think it's still open. You could look for it. It's called the International Global Pitching Research Competition, and it's usually run every to do that. And I can see one of us here has pitched and won. Then other frameworks, I see it's the first time I'm hearing it. There's ADO, TCCM. Maybe I might need to find out more what these frames are about so that I also get to familiarize myself with them. But I think as PhD students, as researchers, wherever we are with our research engagement, we always look for tools and things that can help us from around to get us moving. All right. And I look at the pitching research framework as a way of getting to do more with less. I think that is how FAF captures it in brief. Doing more with less means you have your research idea put in one page, all right? And then now you try to grow it from that one page. But in this one page, it kind of pushes you to kind of critically think through your research idea and say, look at the idea from different perspectives, be it data, be it the key research question, be it the what do you call it, the contribution, and many other even starting from the title, all right? And what this pitching research, and because I've seen quite a number of us may not be very familiar with the framework, you'll allow me to just do a quick run through the research proposal that a PhD student might want to develop out of this. So there are three questions the pitching research framework tries to address. The first one is the why. All right. And you'll see in that framework, there are a number of questions which it kind of pushes you to get you thinking about the motivation of your study. What is the puzzle that you're trying to solve? The so what question. In research, you'll always get this so what question. I'm actually in a Kenya East African Bankers Conference. And this thing, banks do many things, all right, to price credit risk, to appraise loans and the likes. But then somebody was asking, yes, after all this is done, so what? All right, what are we trying to achieve? Okay, why are we tracking the non-performing loans? Why are we tracking the asset quality? Why are we having all these conversations about credit risk in the digital era or the artificial intelligence era? So that so what question is not just in research, but even in practice. Right. So, and it's something that we always have to ask ourselves as we carry on. The contribution, of course, we don't do research for the sake of it. We do it with a reason. So the why is one of the things that the framework tries. Then the what. Once you have the why clearly articulated, then the next thing is the what. All right. So what is the idea that you're trying to pursue? Okay. And that, feeds into the research question. Right? What is the research question you're trying to address? Like today, I just learned from some data that was being presented that when you look at non-performing loans, and I'm going to use that example maybe throughout because I'm in a banking forum here. Some very interesting insight came through, and it was more to do with when you look at non-performing loans and the collateral that has been pledged and the likes, and this is from the East African data, and I would say Kenyan data more specifically. A very interesting insight came through where it was noted that a higher percent of non-performing loans are loans taken by women, right? That was very interesting, all right? But the difference between men and women was just like 1 basis point. But then that triggers a very interesting question, right? What could be contributing to a relatively higher non-performing loan rate by women? All right. And so, people came in with all sorts of, ideas and thoughts around it. The fact that women might be hesitant to ask for restructuring. Definitely, it was clear that the value of loans taken by women is lower. But then now we see the non-performing, rates there being higher than that of men. And there are all sorts of perspectives to it. And somebody might want to pursue that as a research question. Then we have the hypotheses, of course, which are linked to research question there, and then the conceptual frame. So all that is helping us to address the question, what? And you can see all these features are kind of manifest in your research proposal as you develop it. Then the third question is now the how. All right. And the how here, it speaks about the data and the tools. And I think as research advances over time, and especially in accounting finance, people are slowly getting to the micro level data, the kind of the individualized or the personalized kind of data. These are the kind of conversations we've been having here. Long gone are those days we used to look at farm level or these generalized kind of data sets. People are more interested in the person, because when you look at modeling credit behavior, for example, and you look at it at a very general perspective, you may not get to understand even the behavioral aspects, all right, that are linked to a human being or an individual, and the unique peculiarities that go with that individual. So the how is about the data and the tools, the research design. How are you going to approach your study? The methodology, all right? How are you going to go about your study? And even starting with the very basic, is it going to be quantitative, qualitative? Is it going to be mixed methods? And even if it's quantitative, qualitative, which one are you going to begin with? I'm a heavily quantitative person, but over time I've been moving towards qualitative. And interestingly, for the PhD candidate I was supervising, who defended last week, he actually began his approach. He had a mixed methods approach, but he began it with qualitative. It was the first time I was kind of supervising such a project. And it came from a logical thinking through the idea. So remember, the what is what triggered the methodology. So we began with qualitative approach because of the phenomenon that he was investigating. All right, he was more looking at economic crime conviction. But then now later we would have some quantitative data to back or to corroborate or to disprove what we have been told from a qualitative angle. Now, for those who say they are not familiar, and even those who are, as I said, I'll just quickly run through this quickly so that we do not take a lot of time on it. But without this, I'm not able to link that with the proposals that we normally develop. So this is how the pitching research framework looks like. It has several sections. Definitely we start with a working title. So it's a working title even after you've defended your work. All right. So this title can never be stable. It's subject to change. And then now that working title leads to the basic research question. And in one sentence here in the pitching research, you just try to define the key features of the research question. What is the research question you're trying to pursue? Like, for example, in my case here, one might easily say, what is contributing to the relatively higher default rate in women? All right. When they take loans, why are we seeing a relatively higher default rate? And then the next is key papers. What are the key papers that inform your work? All right. And these key papers are, we talk of 3 to 5, all right, but at most 3 papers there. And there's kind of a guide as to the kind of papers that you can go for. Either a paper authored by a guru in that area. You can imagine if you are in finance, the experts in, let's say, SME lending, for example, financial inclusion, or in banking, you look for those people. And then you can look at recently published paper in Tier 1 journal. The journal, there's that indexing, the ABDC and the Scopus and all those kind of rankings we have, or a recent working paper. So recency is very important here. Paper published in top tier journal, and then a paper published by an expert, all right? I think FAF here calls them gurus. Then the next one is motivation. What exactly is the core motivation, right? What puzzle are you trying to resolve? Here we see, like in the example that I'm giving, we have loans being disbursed, right? There are very many. And if anything, men are taking more loans than women. But then now we see women defaulting more than men. So what can explain that? Because naturally, or even psychologically, or looking at the broadest sense, you may want to say men are riskier than women because of the risk taking. Maybe that can be disputed from psychology or research, but it's like a puzzle where we expected this to be the case, but it is the reverse. So you may want to pursue that. Then the idea. All right, so this is the one now which drives the intellectual content of the research topic. And this is where we check whether you are well versed with what it is that you are trying to study. All right, so that is the idea. And we look at, could there be a theoretical tension? Theories might have looked at it this way, or they might be advancing that idea in this direction. But then you may want to disprove that through your research. So, and why you want to disprove is because there could be other studies that have pulled the other side, right? And now you want to come up with your study there so that you can explore this theoretical tension. And there are many other things around the idea there. Then the next is data. So in this template, and remember, this is just a one-pager where you're putting everything together in one. In data now, you look at all features and, angles of data you can possibly look at in terms of what data do you propose to use? Is it at a country level? Is it at micro level? Is it farm specific? Is it industry? Is it macro, micro, meso? Various things. Is it panel, cross-sectional? I think that comes in later at number 3 there. What is your unit of analysis? Are you focusing on a farm? Are you focusing on an individual? Are you focusing on an economy? Are you focusing on a portfolio for those in finance? Are you looking at an industry or sector? Are you looking at a country, countries, regions, and the likes, and sample period? And as I said, I mean, from what I've observed over time, more informative, impactful research is now slowly and gradually getting to the individual level because people want to look at the very micro. Not to say we cannot still study farm level data sets. We can, of course. There are many other things that we need to study in companies, organizations. Sample, it's there. Is it a panel, cross-sectional kind of data, longitudinal? And where are you going to get your data? Again, as you develop your proposal, these are things that you can borrow from the pitch. And so you can see the pitching template has some prompts, has some questions that get you thinking as you develop your proposal. So I hope you see that connection even if we have not gotten there. Then there are many other things around data there. Missing data. I think I have had a PhD student and we got into this challenge of missing data observations. Yes, the data set is there, but then you find there are so many missing data points. What do you do? All right. Where you have to merge data manipulation, cleansing issues. Then the issue of variables there, reliability, all those, there are many things. And then in the pitching template, it kind of gets you thinking ahead proactively because you have to ask yourself, might I get into some data obstacles or challenges with data, not able to get even data, right? Or even the data getting not being that useful, right? Then the next is tools. What econometric software or tools or applications are you going to use and why? Of course, all the time we have to answer the question, the why. Remember the why, what, and how. So why must we go for that tool? What kind of tool and how are we going to use it? And statistical validity, is it an issue? For those who do like qualitative research, like the case that I was just sharing, they talk of getting to, if you're doing interviews, these are qualitative, you get to a point where you realize the respondents are giving you more or less the same kind of response, that saturation, you kind of stop. But now with quantitative data, all right, this thing of statistical validity becomes a major issue there. And then the other 2 key questions there. What's new? I think that's a question you'll always get as a PhD student because a PhD is meant to generate new knowledge, right? And that's why you spend a lot of time on your research. I would say 2/3 of your time is spent, or even more, it's spent on the research component as a PhD student. So this, what's new, has to manifest, right? The novelty, and this comes after a sustained period of interaction with the phenomenon or the concept or the idea that you're trying to study, and the extant literature plus other information that you may come across. So you have to really spend a lot of time. I know we are living in a generative AI era where you can quickly, check and query a few things here and there. But at the end of the day, there's what the generative AI will give you. But you have to ask yourself now as an individual, is this a direction I want to take? All right. Is it logical? Is it something that is worthy of my time? Then there's the question, so what? Why is it important to know the answer? For example, why is it important to interrogate this idea or this observation of higher NPLs or non-performing loans for women as compared to men? could there be structural institutional barriers that are making women default, social barriers or economic barriers or even psychological barriers? You know, all those things are there, but we don't know exactly what could be there. Because I think when that number was displayed, people now started throwing all sorts of, imaginations as to why it is like that. But then now, your research should be able to answer the so what. How will major decisions, behavior, activity be influenced by the outcome of this research? And I believe a study of that nature, like the one I'm just sharing, where a statistic came up there, the non-performing loans for women are higher than men, that might want to, trigger a discussion or, an inquiry into this idea of gender-based financing. Right? I know we've been talking of ESG and the likes, but now we get even closer and start saying gender-based financing. All right, and what is it helping? All right, and how is it customized to the unique peculiarities of the target people? Then the bottom line now, the contribution is also key in the pitching research framework. What is the primary source of the contribution to the relevant research literature? All right. So at the end of the day, after all is said and done, we'll be asking you: are you contributing to knowledge? Are you contributing to practice? Are you contributing to policy and all those things? Then there are other considerations there when it comes to research, and the pitching research template did not kind of come up with an exhaustive list of sections. It left that room for other considerations. Because look, as a PhD student, and as I said, our forum today is more targeted towards PhD students, you start collaboration when you are assigned an advisor, a supervisor, somebody to work with. And that is where the collaboration begins, because now of course, you might have been collaborating with classmates, but formally, I think it begins where now you're assigned a formal supervisor at some point, and then now you begin working with this person, or you seek a supervisor, because again, I know they are kind of, we normally have some PhD programs where you have to get a supervisor or somebody to work with ahead of your study, all right? But that is when you begin the formal collaboration. And that's where you have to start now asking yourself, how are you going to work in this kind of collaboration? First, how many people are you? You are there as a PhD student, you might be assigned 2 people or 3 people. So the issue is, how are you going to work? You might be in different jurisdictions, all right? Again, you have to figure out, but I think we've learned a lot from COVID. Now, very important as PhD students, and here I might be very specific to Kenya, but I think it happens a lot in most African countries. Our PhD students in Kenya are required to publish in good journals, all right? By good journals, I mean the quickest way of checking is just move away from the so-called predatory journals. You can look at Scopus kind of indexed, and all these very credible rankings. But, you have to keep checking the journals from time to time to make sure that they are credible. But as you carry out your PhD research work, we start now getting you think of where would you see your work, being showcased, even as you begin. Remember, we are at the takeoff, all right? So where would you foresee, or where do you see your work being published in? And that's very important, because, like, for example, I can share the case of our university. Our PhD in business and management students are expected to produce, I think, 4 publications, all right? This is, it can take different forms, 3 research papers and a case study, or 2 research papers, a credible conference paper and a case study, so that is the variation we have there. But now these journals are really scrutinized, all right? Even before you take your work to whichever journal, it's always good to check either with your university or your supervisor, because again, you have your supervisors who are, professors and they're senior researchers, and there are some places they might not want to see their work in. So it's always good to engage them and get their nod and support. And they can also help you work through what it takes to have a good paper published there. Risk assessment is there, challenges that you might face in executing the plan. So you can see what the pitching template is doing is it's really preparing you psychologically even, all right, and mentally, and getting into that level where you can even see your full, complete research as you begin, all right? And at whatever level, you might be midway in your proposal, you might have even defended your proposal, But mine is to even challenge you to see how best you can make use of this framework. Because as I said, I used it as recently as my latest promotion, which happened in May. All right. So it can be used at whatever level. Now, talking of this pitching research, people have done research on it, because remember now it's about over 10 years since it has been in place. And I came across this study by Bowie, 2020. It was a study about the usage of the pitching research framework and Bowie chose two jurisdictions. We have New Zealand and Australia. And you can see the usage was higher in Australia. Definitely, I mean, this might be expected because the initiator of this idea is primarily from Australia. But then you can see New Zealand is also there. So these were the two countries. Imagine if this was done in East Africa, for example, or Africa, then we might get very interesting findings. I already have an idea from the, what do you call it, the Menti exercise that we carried out. But this is how it was like. Now, I picked just a few things from this paper to bring us to speed in terms of the various ways you can look at this pitching research framework. And the first one is just the use and who is using it, all right? And you can clearly see there, given the number of researchers there, you can see the percent kind of rises as you move up. And I might want to ask, in terms of position, professor, senior lecturer, of course, we have full professor, associate, senior lecturer, it could be a doctoral fellow there, there's a research assistant. And the question might be, who do you think is at 44%, right? And a similar question can go, who do you think is at 67%? So these just two extremes there. And it would be interesting to note that the full professors are the ones at 44%, all right? Very interesting there. And then now it goes up all the way to PhD students, who you can see they are now the ones at 67%. All right, maybe because of the perceived importance of this template. It's also relatively new. It's just been there for slightly over 10 years. And maybe some of these senior researchers, the professors and the associate, they may not have been exposed to it and they are not aware, or they may have already subscribed to certain ways of doing things. But for PhD students, you can see the usage is quite high there. We also looked at, Bowie also looked at it in terms of the discipline, all right? And of course here, the template can be used across disciplines, all right? It can be multi, trans, inter, or cross, all right? It can be many disciplines. But here, I was just looking at in terms of accounting and finance, all right? I just took accounting finance because that's our focus here in the association. And you can clearly see there, in terms of the numbers, we have one discipline where it's at 40% and the other one is at 85%. And I don't know whether you can guess who is where, but you can see there, right? Maybe this might be linked to the number of people pursuing research in that area, all right, that discipline and the likes, but there could be other things around it. But you can see most of them are in finance. Then I looked at a third and final item here in their paper. And they were looking at now, when it comes to the PhD students, which is what we have here, in terms of the research methodology, how are they utilizing it? Is it in quantitative kind of research approaches or qualitative kind of studies? And when you look at it, you'll find majority, but it's almost there, very close. It's slightly higher on qualitative and lower on quantitative, but you can see mixed methods. I mean, it was quite high there. And that shows that this template can be used across, all right? All sorts of, research designs and approaches. Now, Bowie notes that while similar in structure to a traditional research proposal, many students and academics found the 2-page, in fact, we normally insist on the 1-page, research template superior to the traditional 20-page proposal or so. A proposal can be 20, 30 pages, whatever number of pages. But when you squeeze everything into this 1-pager or 2-pager max, 1,000 words, then you might end up even achieving a little bit more. Of course, now when you translate it to a proposal, you need to add more detail and the likes, but you can see how the pitching research template, and I had a chance to even extract one sentiment here by a respondent from that study. Right, so on page 11, at the initial stage, I actually had no idea what I needed to put in the research proposal. This is a PhD student. We were given a very generic structure. You see that? And I think this happens a lot with us PhD students. I still remember when I was a PhD student, we were given some structure. They are very generic. Like you need an introduction, motivation, the methodology, the literature, and so on. They are too generic. And if I had been given the research framework template earlier, it would have cut a lot of work down from what I had done previously. Right. And now imagine, now that you have the pitching research template, you have generative AI, of course, responsible use of it. And now you have your literature and other information sources. You can even be more effective and produce even better quality work than we used to do those days. Now, still on this, I was a bit very keen on the links between this pitching research framework usage and the role it plays in developing a research proposal. Remember, the focus we have for our forum today is just on the research proposal. And I got a couple of things there from the study by Bowie. Many things came as far as research proposal assistance is concerned. So there was a talk about the timing of the pitch and the proposal, what comes before the other. And of course, here my recommendation is the pitch comes before the proposal. All right, so you need to pitch your idea. And you know, the beauty with a pitch is you are able to do more with less. That's what I said when I was starting. And why I am saying that is because in the pitch, we do not ask you to come up with the many studies that you have to read. No, all we look for is the at most 5 key papers. I would say at most 3 papers. And that's the literature that you can now advance in your pitch. And then later now, of course, there's that funnel approach where you must have read to come to the 3 or 5 papers. It's useful before proposal is done. You can see that. So the pitch becomes more useful before the proposal, before you develop your full research paper if you're publishing. But this pitching research template, as I said, can be used in very many ways or areas. You can have it for your research paper. I would say 50% of my research papers that I've ever published, I have utilized the pitching research framework. It gets me thinking. Whenever I have the idea, I squeeze it in this one page, and then now I blow it from there. Similar in structure between the pitch and proposal, as we shall see shortly. So already you can tell the pitch sections are very closely linked to the proposal. Actually, they are more linked to the proposal than the final full study, which has 5, 6, 7 chapters. Traditional guidelines are too generic. I think you've already seen that in the sentiment. And then it's easier if students had prior experience. And that's why, as the African Accounting and Finance Association, we've taken it upon ourselves to equip you with all these so that if you're in accounting finance, at least you are aware there is this template, there is this guideline. And as I said, there are many other guidelines. I think I saw that from Menti. And our objective is to expose you to as many as we can so that you choose the ones which you can use to help you even be more productive as a researcher. The framework can be used as a template for proposal. Then the front end of the proposal, you saw the working title, the key papers and the likes. There was also talk of simpler version of the proposal, right? So the template looking like a simpler version of the proposal. It's a different way of looking at the proposal, backbone of the proposal, higher quality proposal research. In fact, when you read the seminal work by Professor Robert Pfaff, the paper he has published on pitching research, and I suggest you look for it. It's available. It's available on SSRN. I have put it as one of my references here. When you read it, it talks of the pitching research tool being a powerful way of pitching a powerful proposal, right? Whether for your PhD study or even for funding, because it's for some who are in this research space, we might want to pitch proposals for funding. And it's best viewed as a critical thinking and design framework, right? So I added the word critical there because I've used it over time and I've found it very useful in getting to critically think your research idea. Now, we know the traditional research proposal is more of a documentation framework. We have to put things in the structure prescribed and have the literature there. But this framework, the pitching research framework, helps a research student to develop a compelling research idea before writing the proposal. Please note, it's not a replacement of the proposal, but it is like a preamble, right? A precursor to the proposal. Then the proposal now expands each pitching element into a distinct chapter. Now, I move now on to the more detail. Now, in terms of linking the framework to the proposal, all right, and how the two link. And here we are saying the research framework follows kind of a logical progression. So there are parts. You can move up, down, then down, up. So it's not a linear process really, but somehow we have some progression. And you can move around even some sections in there. All right, you might be rotating around your key idea and contribution there. What's new and the motivation, but the message here, it's not linear, but at least we have some structure to it. Now, the first stage is defining the research problem, and this gets into chapter 1, where we talk of introduction to your research. And the pitch components you'll see captured there are the A title, basic research question, the key papers, motivation, what's new, so what, contribution. So these sections in the pitching template will help you develop your chapter 1 of your proposal: the background, the problem statement, the research objectives, the research questions, and the significance of the study. And in the next slide, I give you more detail now in terms of how each links to the other. So like, for example, the working title, it's what is the study about? You have the proposal title. Of course, when you look at the pitching research, and that's why I'm suggesting you read the detailed write-up by FAF. It's updated as of 2024. It kind of gives you more insights as to what you should look out for this title to be a researchable and a good research title. But I've captured some bit of it there: concise, researchable, context, relationship among the variables and the likes. Now, the second part is the basic research question and the key papers. What exactly is being investigated? And this helps you a lot in formulating your research problem, right? Or the objectives, the questions. And this forms the foundation of the problem statement and guides the development of objectives and research questions. Then the next one is the motivation, the puzzle, plus the key paper still. Why is this research necessary? All right. So you can clearly see these first two columns are kind of pushing you to think through critically, guided by the pitching research framework. But then the next two columns there are now the research proposal. And that why is this research necessary is linked to the background of the study, the statement of the problem, and the significance of your study. Provides a justification for the study by identifying the gap, puzzle, and what is the importance of that study practically. Then the next part is what's new, what's novel about the study. Again, feeding into the problem statement and part of chapter 2. I think you can see it's kind of capturing chapter 2 in there. Summary of literature and research gaps there. And it clearly articulates the originality of the study and how it advances existing knowledge. I know we do push and promote the replication kind of studies, but for PhD level work, we are looking at a bit of novelty, right? Some contribution to knowledge and real contribution to knowledge. So that is very key there. The so what? Why should anyone care? And this speaks to the significance of the study, all right? So who is going to benefit, or the societal contribution, societal implications even of your study, and practical as well as policy. Then contribution, what knowledge will the study add? And as I said, for PhD, this is not negotiable. So you're expected to kind of contribute some knowledge or some theory or advance some theory, or even challenge, you can challenge theories. But you can see the contribution also feeds into the chapter 5 or 6, depending on how you've structured your thesis there. So you can see the contribution goes past the proposal stage. Now, next is stage 2, building the research foundation. And this is chapter 2. I think it's typically the literature review and the hypothesis or something like that. And the pitch components are given there on the left side. The key papers, that's part C. E is the idea. H, it's what's new. And J is the contribution of your research. And the output that comes out of these components, if you link them nicely with the proposal, is you'll have a theoretical review, you'll have an empirical review, you'll have the research gaps, the framework, and you'll be able to see the variables and how they can be operationalized. And this is how the detail looks like. This is literature review. It's a somewhat open, chapter there, which allows you to, look around and see what literature is relevant. Not forgetting that funnel approach we always talk about. You read a lot, but then you have to narrow it to your research area. So this is where we'll narrow it to the key papers. There are at most 3 papers. And these are the same papers that will feature in your problem statement, all right? Even when you're defending your work as a PhD student, somebody might ask, okay, fine, take us through the key papers that informed your work, all right? So just quickly go to the key papers. You see, if you had your pitch very well done, then you won't struggle there. I've seen candidates or PhD students struggle in this area, but if you clearly can identify your key papers, the ones that are informing your gap, whatever it is you're pursuing, then you are able to quickly refer to them. Idea, what is central? What is the central argument or hypothesis? So this takes you to your chapter 2 theoretical review, conceptual frame. And for those who want to formulate hypothesis, then this can really help you a lot. Then there are 2 sections there, what's new and the contribution. And they're all speaking about the novelty and the knowledge that you're adding. And that comes in chapter 2 when you're summarizing your literature and the gaps in literature and the variables that you want to pursue. And then now that feeds into the conceptualization of the study. So that is about chapter 2, which features in stage 2. And then now finally, we have chapter 3, where we're talking about now designing your study, right? Designing your study is all about data, the tools, and the other considerations. One of the other considerations here was the risks. We talked of risks here, and one of the risks here is obsolescence. All right, we've had cases where you take too long in your PhD study. All right, remember PhD study can be 3.5, 4 years, 5 years, but then now you find yourself taking 7, 8, 9, 10 years. Now that increases this risk. All right, you may find whatever it is that you were studying 6 years ago has already been overtaken by events or has already been published or it's completed. All right, so and in this era things are moving very fast. All right, so you have to really be on top of your game. The output we have for this is a research philosophy section, design, population, sampling, data collection, analysis, research quality, and the ethical considerations. Like takes care of the entire chapter 3. And here we have the detail. Starting with data, the key question you're trying to address here is what evidence will answer the question? All right, and here we have the population and sampling data collection methods. And that links to the study setting, the sample, data sources, variables, measurement, and data quality issues. The next is the tools. All right, we are now in chapter 3. How will the research be conducted? What tools are you thinking of deploying? Of course, this could change. Remember, it's still a proposal. So there's room for change. But at this level, we are trying to get closer to what we will actually do. All right. So that's where we have the research philosophy, the design, the analysis, issues around data quality. Research quality, sorry. I'm thinking of data quality because of the credit risk forum I am in. Now, this one guides the selection of research design, the statistical techniques, analytical method, software and validity considerations. And speaking of tools, because we want to carry out impactful and relevant research that has practical policy implications, many a times you may want to ask yourself, if you're carrying out a study on financial inclusion, for example, or on financial services, whichever aspect, then you have to ask yourself, is this some study that you can present before a panel of bankers or microfinance players or credit union players or insurance or whoever it is in the space, and they listen to you? Or might they want to say, this is just one of those academic piece of works that are being done, and yeah, it ends there. And the reason I'm saying that is just referring to the conference that I have been in, the East African Banking Conference. You find some researchers who are allowed to present their works, but when you listen to it, it's clearly very good piece of work which can inform policy practice and many insights and the things that are happening in the space. Like one of them was speaking about the issue of the credit scoring, all right, and the behavioral approaches to credit scoring, and even the modeling that comes with it, machine learning, I don't know, Python kind of programming and the likes. And this is a move from the traditional regression approaches that we normally know and logistic, probit. There's a shift towards now closer behavioral models that are being used to model credit risk. And you can clearly see this person did that, right, in their research, PhD, of course, and now it's being used, all right? All those insights are really being used and updated. And again, this issue of having relevant, updated data is also coming up strongly. They talk of stale data, or this idea of obsolescence. So it's also something that as researchers we have to be aware of, so that whatever research you're carrying out is relevant. Then now we also have other considerations, because here we are asking, is the study feasible? All right. Will it be possible to carry it out? Do we have data? Will it stand the test of time? Will the findings be, can they be generalized? Can they be extrapolated? Can they, all those things. And here we're also looking at the ethics part of it, because again, we have to collect data properly. In this era of data protection, we have to watch out for all ethical issues that must be complied with before. I've even seen some journals which require you to supply the research license that you got in the course of carrying out your research. Issues around collaboration, I spoke about it. Publication strategy is also there, all right? Where do you foresee? And my appeal, and as long as we are in this forum, the African Accounting and Finance Association, we encourage our PhD students to make sure they publish their work in good quality journals, right? And in case you have a doubt, you can have a chat with your supervisor, your institution. You can reach to some of us. We can help in that regard. Then limitations and then practical considerations there also exist. So as I come to the end of my presentation, in summary, this is how you can look at the pitching research framework vis-a-vis the proposal, all right? So on this end here, you see the proposal here. On this end, you see the pitch sections, and you can see each has been kind of mapped. Of course, I made use of the generative AI to help me in this one, because you can imagine such images do not just come that easy. So, but I kind of tried as much as I can, and I had a look through it and checked whether it's correctly mapped, and I can say, yes, it is. And you can see it's a very interesting one. If you look at the image in between there, it looks like a very interesting tree there with some branches and some fruits, and some at the end of down there, there's kind of some base, right? So it's a stable tree there. But the problem statement, you can see it's heavily informed there. I think this is the core of your research. The problem statement, if you get it right there, then you notice that all is well. Plus, of course, there's a research gap here also building up. So these two kind of connect to each other, and you can see they're heavily motivated by the pitch. So overall, what I would say is the pitch is a very good starting point for whatever research endeavor you have as a PhD student. Even if you haven't done it, I would say it's time to try it out and see what it can do. For me, I have tried using it since 2014, and it has really helped me. I'm a living testimony of what it can do. An advocate, I do represent the pitching research network in some quarters. And in case you want to engage more on the use of pitch and what it can do, and even publications around it, I'm more than happy to engage on that. And I end by saying a strong pitch builds a strong proposal, which produces meaningful research and real-world impact, right? A strong pitch, spend a bit of time of it. And you realize a pitch is not something you develop in 10 minutes, all right? It takes a bit of time because you have to critically think. But once you do it very well, it will help you produce very good quality proposal. As I close, still furthering issues around responsible research and pitching, we have a special call for papers where I am one of the guest editors. So this is a very open one, all right? It's a very open kind of call for papers, and we are calling it the Pacific Basin Finance Journal, Responsible and Open Science in Action, a coordinated 4-part virtual special issue portfolio. So there are many, but I am a guest editor in this. Why? Because Africa is our business here, and we are in Africa. So I'm supporting that. So in case you have any paper line to this special call, look for it. I've given you the link there. You can take a screenshot of this slide and then have a look, read more and see if whatever you're doing is aligned, and then you can share. But I think it's a very open, and it's a good journal, I would say, which supports open access. These are the references and information sources. As I said, for those who want to read more on pitching research framework and what it can do, you have the pitchingresearch.com there. Then there's something we call the Inspires Network. This is the international society for pitching research or responsible research. All right. It's there, and the International Global Pitching Research Competition. There's a link there. There's even a micro credential if you want on this. So a lot of work has been done there. And with that, I want to say thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Prof. We're very grateful for your time. At this time, we want to open the floor for questions, comments, and anything that anybody has. Questions, comments. If there are questions that anybody has, you can put your hand up, and we'll give you the opportunity to ask. Anything? Okay, so Prof, as we're waiting for questions, I'd say that the first time you were using this framework, right? What did you really struggle with? And what was the biggest challenge over the years you had to navigate to perfect using this framework?
Thank you. Thank you, Theodora. I think what was difficult is
Prof,
initially
please,
it
can you
was
hear
feeling
me?
that. Yes, I can hear you. I hope you can hear me too.
Yes, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So initially, what I really struggled with was filling the template. Yeah, just filling it, because I thought it would take me, 5 minutes. Because when you look at it, it's just one page. And I can even show it here. It looks like very basic, like a one page. But then now, the moment you start filling it, then you realize you have to think a lot. It gets you really thinking. It gets you really thinking, and you cannot feel it in those 5, 10 minutes. You have to go back, and forth, looking for information here and there. This is how the template looks like, yeah. So it will prompt you with the sections and what you need to fill in, but then it's not as easy as it looks, and it's just like a pager. Actually, it's a page up to there where you see the red write up. Just a pager, but it's not as easy to fill as it looks.
Okay. Great. Any questions from the audience? Any questions from the audience?
Perhaps Theodora, not a question, but just an
Anybody?
additional feedback. Thank you so much, David.
Yes, please.
I think the pitching framework is something we've been working with, and it's interesting, David. We have started a special interest group in AFANS, and it's going to go on live, I think, at the next AFANS conference. So it's been going on, and there was a couple of papers I think I wrote with Bin. So that paper you were referencing is Bin Bill, and Bin, myself. I think we had Chelsea and Visual also use the pitching research framework. I think we try to see how it is used for grant application. So that's another point. So just sort of indicating that it can go a long way. Let me see if I can put something in the chat. There's a link there. It's a pre-registered work, but it's also not only, I think it's not only for just that sort of PhD research. You can think about it, and you did mention that from more perspective. So For people who haven't tried it, it's a very practical tool, so you're welcome to test it. One thing that came up from your presentation, David, is that the level of professors that use it is quite low. And there's a reason. I think it could be an accident, but when Robert Pfaff started the whole pitching thing, he was very intentional to make it more of a PhD early career researcher tool. And I suspect that may have registered in the minds of more established researchers that, it's not really something that they will be very keen to test. But as time progressed, and by the way, you and I were part of that polycentric paper we wrote where there were how many of us? 15 of us, 15 or 16 authors that it's interesting. Let me see if I can find that work as well. So, but we were using it. It's the modified version now, but it's now to pitch your profile. Remember that project, David? So that's also what I'm trying to draw out here is that the pitching template or framework itself has actually, if I say it's it's sort of grown from very small focus tool for PhD students or ideation of method of research work to all the several aspects that people can use it for. So if you're in the room and you're an established academic and you're thinking maybe I don't want to use it for my research work, that's correct. But you can also use it to pitch your research profile. A lot of universities want people to kind of define who are you as a researcher. And the pitching research is another tool that helps for that. I'll see if I can put the link to that article there. See if that one works. So I've just put some of these materials in case anybody is still looking at different way to mobilize it. David,
Thank
some
you.
thoughts? Yeah.
Prof.
Inka,
David, the
I
chat
see,
also has a few questions. So once
yeah,
you give your thoughts, then maybe you could take the things in the chat and then you respond to it. Thank you.
very good. Thank you. I see from Patrick Kakoza is asking, is the pitching template a software? I wouldn't say it's a software per se. It's just like it's a Word document there. Let me share the link where you can get a copy of that. It's like a Word document you feed in. There could be some automated versions of it, but it's largely a Word document, Patrick, which you can download and fill in. In case you need a copy of it, I can also share. It's the one I was sharing here in Word. So you just fill it in and it helps you in various ways there. Then I see another one here from Sophie. Have you used it in paper writing too? As I said, 50% of my research publications have been written courtesy of the pitching research tool. So since I got to know about it, and the other 50% is because I do collaborate, maybe, and the originator of the study, it could be someone who has not used the template. But for my own initiated studies, I've actually used it. It's one of the things I use naturally. Arnold, is there a risk that optimizing a proposal pitch framework, 1,000 words constraint, forced brevity, pushes candidates towards simpler, more linear causal models at the expense of proposals that genuinely need multivariate or moderated designs? So Arnold, they normally say what the taste of the cake is in the pudding. I don't know, but when you use it, maybe we can engage from your experience in using the template. Yes, it does push you to be very brief. And the reason for being brief is even ask when you're presenting your work to the panel, how many minutes do they give you, right? And that can answer the question. Yes, you need the detailed proposal, which they'll get to read. That's okay. But the pitch will bring you to the message that you need to convey to your panel in a very concise, precise way. So as I said, it is no replacement for the full research proposal. It is not a replacement. All right. It's just something it's a starting point, and it can also be the ending point where you can refer back to your pitch and use it even to pitch your work to the panel. Judah there is asking, hello, Prof. Thank you for the informative session. Have you used the template with the undergraduate students, experience and advice? One of the things I've done at my level is to encourage my fellow faculty members to adopt the pitching research framework, and I've seen quite a number of them have taken it up. It's not institutionalized as such, but I think it's a very innovative way of even teaching research methods. I think some of us here are faculty members. And I can tell you one of the game changers I've had when teaching research methods is the pitching framework. It really helps me, but this is at graduate level. So for the undergraduate, no. I know FAF has organized some chapters or some forums and competitions for the undergraduates. So it has been used elsewhere, but I haven't used it myself at undergraduate level. Then I think that is that. We have something from Ugochukwu. He has shared some detail there. I think that's that, Theodora.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, there's one more from Meshach there. Can we use pitching framework for MSc? Yes, for sure. As I said, I use it when teaching my Master of Science in Development Finance students, and they found it very useful as students. So you can use it also at the master's level. Theodora?
Great. Thank you all so much for your engagement. Thank you for the questions. Thank you, Prof. David. I think we've all truly learned something really new. I think I was also thinking about the undergraduates thinking as well. So it was interesting the person raised it because in my university, we have the seminar series for undergraduates who are writing thesis or what we call long essays, right? And I see how sometimes they struggle. So we are all going to test it and come and share with you how it goes with the undergraduate classes and students as well. So thank you so much. At this time, I would allow Prof. Yinka to give us a bit of announcement, AAFA, the conference details, and then we'll wrap it up. Thank you. Prof, please, over to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Theodora, and thank you very much, David. I think it's been very educative, and these are practical tools that people will take with them in terms of what they do. Just for everyone, as we close, we just want to remind you about our AAFA conference. It's already late to submit papers, but if you have submitted and you're planning to attend, please take advantage of the early bird registration, which closes in 2 days' time. Mimi, if you can just put in the link if you're still on the call. I think the
All right,
web
sure.
the web page here for the conference so people can see updates around what's going on. There are still a couple of events we'll have later similar to this one, whether for the Francophone group or the Anglophone group, which Theodora is looking after. But you just keep in touch with us and try to follow us on our social media page. Mimi, if you also put a WhatsApp, no, we don't have, well, the LinkedIn page. If you follow the LinkedIn page, let me see if I can find that one while Mimi is looking at the call for paper. It will be a good place to get to hear and see what's happening to be up to date with the events. That will be all there is at this point, but I want to also really thank you all for taking our time today to join us for this session. And thank you so much, Theodora, for organizing this. It's all from me, and I'll see you at the next event. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Thank you all very, very much. And we hope that you enjoy the rest of your day. Maybe as you go out, you can use an emoji to just show us how you are feeling about using the research framework, pitching framework. So mine would be, I'm excited. So let's have more of that. Thank you so much, Prof. And See you
Excellent.
all in our next virtual seminar. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.